The moment is here, you can stop your search. It's Comics by Perch.
Well, hey everybody, it's Perch. I don't know. I'm just trying to do a little bit. I don't know what I'm doing. Anyway, so I'm sure a lot of people would do videos on this because it's kind of the Ouroboros of a snake eating its own tail of outrage, where some people do some stuff and then somebody comments on it, and people comment on the person commenting, and it kind of goes around and around. But almost none of it means anything. I mean, none of it leads to anything of value anywhere. And that's the really kind of insane part about this. So anyway, DC is doing an Alan Scott book. All right. And Alan Scott, Green Lantern, somewhat OG Green Lantern. And several years back, I want to say retconned. It's kind of like a Iceman kind of thing where people are like, well, how did you know he wasn't always gay? Well, I mean, I don't know, because they published a whole lot of comics where, there was never any indication of it, but all right. I mean, sure, I guess he just never talked about it. I mean, the Alan Scott situation for me, and I'm saying this, somebody who's read a lot of comics. And so for, several of you are just in it for the culture wars, you will have a different opinion and more power to you. But the retconning, and I'm going to use that word, having Bobby Drake be gay, made a hell of a lot less sense than Alan Scott. With Alan Scott, you did have at least, some ground to stand on going, yeah, okay, this is plausible. Again, still odd, you say, well, he had kids. Yeah, but, that, gay people can have kids, sure. With Bobby, there were very distinct, it made no sense. Literally, it made no sense. If you really read the comics, you have to basically go with headcanon Twitter shit in order to get there with Bobby. With Alan Scott, you can go, well, he was closeted and fine. I mean, again, I still think it was a retcon, but at least it's a more sensible one. I can't wait to see how people are going to misinterpret that. Anyway, there's an Alan Scott comic, and it's going to deal with kind of I want to say the backstory, but kind of the stuff that wasn't put on the page before around how he dealt with being gay. And I don't, in fairness, let me actually be completely fair to the book. I don't know that that's what it's going to fully deal with, but at least they're promising some level of kind of what it was like to operate, kind of back in, olden times, when Perch was only 40. I'm kidding. And be gay. And so the writer of this is Tim Sheridan. And Tim Sheridan goes out and he posts a little video kind of promoting the book. And here's how he decides to do it. Comics friends, queer friends, allies. I'm saying it this way because he's ending these sentences with exclamation points. So I'm trying to kind of convey the exclamation point. Comic friends, queer friends, allies, I need your help. Please share, all in caps, this, and let's work together to deliver CG a big L. Hashtag love Alan Scott. And there's a little video of him, excitedly talking. He looks kind of excited. He's smiling and grinning. And then, he turned off the responses because, well, it had a shitload of engagement. And then he follows it up. For you innocents, wondering what, quote, CG, quote, is, they're a hateful group of misogynist, queer-phobic, racist a-holes who actively work to take down comics with any hint of diversity. They deserve a big loss. That would be the L I mentioned. I want to kind of, dissect that. Like, look, if you need to, if you say, let's give these people the big L, and then you have to follow it up explaining what L stands for, I just, in my heart of hearts, I feel like you're on the wrong track. Like you've gone to a weird place. And keep in mind, if your game here, or your motive, I don't know, if your thing here is, hey, CG people are too stupid to know what L is, so I'm going to explain it in a really pedantic way in order to kind of further reinforce my point that they're dumb, you wouldn't say they deserve a big loss. That would be the L I mentioned. You're not talking to the group you're insulting. You're talking to the group you're asking for help with. And if I'm a group that's being asked for help, I wouldn't want to be. I mean, I don't know. I'd be mildly offended if somebody told me what L is. At the very least, I'm thinking this person's not a good writer, which, again, you're promoting a book you're writing. So I don't know that that's the best move. Anyway, he then continues because there's a third follow-up because the second follow-up was not enough. So you got a third follow-up and says, BTW, that's by the way, friends, BTW, the quoted posts are hilarious on this. And he's somehow, at this point, he's forgotten uppercase, lowercase. He's gone for the very popular in the 90s, all lowercase look. He goes, lots of CG a-holes are mad. BC, that's because, not bleeding cool. Because I didn't frame this as, read my story, it's good, and you'll like it. I'd say that's implicit if I had any confidence they knew that word. So, dude, you're explaining what L means to your supporters, and then you're trying to mock your opposition for not knowing implicit. Like, what are you doing? What, dude? What are you doing here? It makes no sense. Anyway, yeah. Again, this is the snake eating its own tail phenomenon, because for the unenlightened, is a reference to a situation looping indefinitely. The problem here is it's not getting us anywhere. If you're DC, by the way, looking at this, you are not excited that your writer of your new comic has chosen the best way to promote this is to taunt some people on Twitter, which, and this is going to make the CG people mad, is a relatively small group of consumers compared to the entire market size you're trying to sell to. Now, this is basically business fundamentals. I'm not, whether there's 10, there's obviously more than 10, 100, 10,000 people who are CG, that is not a sizable audience to run your entire marketing campaign behind. I'll put it to you in an entirely different way. If you look at a book, if you look at ISOM, right, that book, and you take all the backers of that book, not the money, but the volume of backers, okay, and you take that amount of unit sales as people. So let's say I could not tell you what ISOM number. Let's go with 2. How many backers there was that? But let's say there were. Look, there's not 50,000 backers for that book. 50,000 people. Maybe there is. Please correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. It doesn't really change the point here, but you want to appeal, like with any comic that's being produced by the mainstream comic publishing industry. What you're hoping for is, you're hoping for 100,000 units sold. That's what you're going for. That's what you want. You might say, but no comic sells like that. Yeah, exactly. But that's what you would prefer. If we look at the point where the direct market, non-newsstand, but the direct market back several years ago, number one issues would hit that 100,000 mark. If you're in Marvel, they do still try and get a big launch number one issue to 100,000. They'll use variant covers and other ways to do it. But 100,000 units sold, fine. If you took the entire CG audience and supported big books, ISOM, Cyberfrog, Jawbreakers, that's not first of all, those are not all unique people. There's a lot of people who bought each one or all three or whatever. And by the way, I don't know that are all three of those books CG? I know Richard, who does the Jawbreaker, says he's not CG. Ethan, who does Cyberfrog, says he is. I'm going to be super honest with you. I can tell you if Eric July is going with that or not. I just don't know. But regardless, if you take that entire audience, it's not a big enough mass to run your marketing campaign behind as a book. Now, don't get me wrong. If somehow, some way, you could attract that entire group to come buy your $4.99, $3.99 comic, that's not a bad thing. It's more sales. That's good. But it doesn't make any sense from a mainstream corporate marketing perspective. Any more than it makes any sense to say, hey, fans of Squirrel Girl, come buy this comic. Squirrel Girl, when it was at Marvel, sold copies, the initial issues of like 35,000 units. By the way, I'm conflating one thing, and some jackass in the comments are going to go there, but I'm conflating units sold to individual purposes. Yes, I'm aware that comic shops will order comics. Not all of them sell. I'm also aware that people buy more than one comic for sure, but that will just get silly with the math at some point. I'm trying to keep this point very simple. It would be nice if you could take the 35,000 odd people that bought Squirrel Girl #1 and move them into your comic along with whatever other audience you're attracting. That'd be great. But you would never advertise a mainstream comic book of saying, hey, Squirrel Girl fans, we want all of you. That would be stupid. Equally stupid is going in and saying, like, this is picking a fight that has no point to it. So, I guess I'm falling into what Tim Sheridan was saying of saying, hey, you should promote the book rather than kind of taunt CG. Yeah, no shit, you should. Obviously, you should. By the way, you should also, if you're a mainstream comic company, you could insert anything into there besides CG. You could insert liberals. You could insert SJWs. You can insert anti-SJWs. You can put whatever you want in there. It's a dumb way to promote a book. It's just dumb. It works for some of the crowdfunding people because they have the YouTube channel and their entire business proposition is based on more than just a comic book. It's also based on the show that they're putting on. It's based on kind of a counterculture. We need to protect comics. It's based on more than just the book. But if you're a mainstream Marvel and DC publisher, you would be insane to market any title either promoting or attacking a relatively, in the grand scheme of things, small audience to where you really need to get to. What you need to do, if you're Marvel or DC, is figure out, how do I get to the 100,000 purchases and appeal to that audience? That's what you need to do. Now, granted, maybe people are going to show up and say, well, CG is 100,000 people. I don't think so. Based on, again, the sales of a lot of the crowdfunded books, it just doesn't add up to that. So, again, what are you doing? By the way, again, I think, to me, the CG aspect of it is where a lot of people are going to comment and make videos. That's a red herring. Again, for the moment, suspend your disbelief. Forget about CG. Forget about that entire thing. Imagine, if you will, a movie coming out saying, hey, it's the Barbie movie. Come watch the Barbie movie. And who's going to be really bad? Who's going to be really mad about Barbie? Who's going to be really mad? The Mexicans. So you definitely want to stick it to the Mexicans. Watch Barbie. Okay, but beside that being like obnoxiously racist, that's stupid as a marketing campaign. I'll do something that's a little bit less cheeky. If you're saying, come watch Barbie, it will really stick it to all the people who like Disney. Marketing 101 says you do not promote something by crapping on something else. It never works. They call that a circular hate campaign, which is kind of ironic given, what Tim is saying CG is. That's a legitimate marketing term. If you go talk to somebody in marketing advertising, a circular hate campaign is when you promote your thing by, crapping on something else. And everybody will tell you, marketing 101 is, you never do that because it instills a fight that doesn't exist. What we're going to see happen, by the way, if I can fast forward a little bit, is Alan Scott Green Lantern is not going to sell a lot of copies. Now, the really crazy part is, I'll bet if you could somehow go to a parallel Earth and you could, run an experience where you looked at the sales of, the book after Tim Sheridan making the statement, doing his thing, or the sales where he said nothing. He just showed up and he's like, I've got an Alan Scott book coming out. You should buy it. That's it. Here's my guess. I'll bet the sales would be within 5%. I'm going to go even further. the sales would be within 2% in both realities. Because the reality is, look, people who are CG, buyers, people who are in CG are not going to go buy a goddamn Alan Scott book in 2023 from DC. The odds of that are extremely low. Full stop. Now, if you put Mark Millar and Jim Lee on the book, yeah, a lot more people are going to buy it. But if it's a Tim Sheridan, Alan Scott book, people are not going to buy it. The CG group is not going to buy it, put it that way. The bigger question is, will Tim Sheridan saying that cause comic retailers to order more? Meaning, is there a retailer in a store who's going to go, hey, I saw this post by Tim Sheridan. He's saying we got to stick it to Alan Scott, so I'm going to order an extra 100 copies. Sorry, not stick it to Alan Scott. Stick it to CG. Not sticking anything to Alan Scott. Stick it to CG. I'm going to order 100 copies. No, nobody's going to do that. Nobody's going to say it, and no retailer is going to bite for that. So then the other question is, are readers going to go to a comic shop and go, I'm buying this copy because I'm sticking it CG? Highly, highly unlikely. Highly. 1 in 1,000 people, 1 in 2,000 people are going to do that. And unfortunately, we're talking about a book that's going to float in here at around 35,000 copies, maybe, if it's lucky, maybe. And there's some variant copies. So all of this is the snake eating its own tail. It's circular and it's dumb. It doesn't matter. None of this leads to anything. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the problem. So we can look at that and we can certainly say, yeah, Tim Sheridan should do a better job marketing. He should promote comics a different way. This is not right. We can certainly do all that, and that's fine. But it begs the question of, why is any of this happening in the first place? Because it makes no sense and brings no value. And if who's the big loser in all this? Well, it's not Alan Scott fans. They're getting a book if they're still Alan Scott fans, or they stopped buying a long time ago if they're not. The big loser in this is Tim Sheridan, because he has a book that's going to sell poorly, and it was going to sell poorly where he said a lot or said nothing, and he made all this noise and didn't move the needle at all. So what was the point? Anyway, fun times with marketing. Thanks for listening.